It's not a problem.
No
I
problem.
mentioned Mark Prinsky, and I'd like Mark to join. Then Doug Hoolan has his hand up. Mark?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Hi, Jemay. Thank you for doing this. Very interesting to hear about your book and what you're doing. I hope we get a chance to talk offline and or in another situation. I'm reminded, I don't know whether you know the story of Vint Cerf joining Google, where he tells a very funny story about how he had to go back and find his college degree at one point. And I mean, he was already Vint Cerf, but they made him go through all those things. And then as a result of that, they stopped doing that. And they suddenly decided, wait, I don't think we need all this kind of stuff. So it's a funny story. But Ben mentioned the word, and I'm thrilled that Ben disagrees with me. That's always a feather in my cap. But Ben mentioned assumptions, and the key assumption that underlies what you're doing and what this is that if you have, whether it's a degree or if you have a set of credentials, that will lead to success. So therefore, it's worth getting those things because there's some guarantee, or at least statistical guarantee, that will happen. And I don't know that there's so much evidence of that. I'd love to see more evidence of that because we talk about it a lot, but you know, in the past, there was evidence, I think, statistical evidence, that if you got a degree, you would earn X amount more over your lifetime. And that may have been true in the 20th century, and at least with some evidence for getting a degree. But the third thing that is important is that work is moving to projects. And if you don't think that that's true, read Antonio Nieto Rodriguez. Projects, in fact, somebody told me at IBM once, we don't even do job descriptions anymore. We only do project descriptions. So it's becoming a much more series of projects instead of a role or a job. And in that case, you can document projects. We're not talking about George Santos where he makes up shit on his resume. Is that the guy you're talking about? No, I mean, obviously anybody can put anything they want down on paper. They could say that Ben Kaczynski ran the Harvard Business School. But on the other hand, projects and accomplishments and things you can point to in the world are real, hopefully. Sure. And my criterion and so I take issue also with Jemay's statement that learning to learn is the important skill. I think the important skill is learning to accomplish. Learning is a means to accomplishment. And so what we don't have, what we never teach our kids very much, is learning to accomplish. So when they get out of school and into a workplace for the first time, they can't do anything. So they start at the very bottom. And that's what we do with people. And it's so sad because if they had spent those 12 or 20 years or 6 or 12 or whatever number of years actually doing project after project after project that had a visible, measurable, positive impact on some aspect of the world, then we could say, oh, I've had this impact and this impact and this impact and this impact. Is that what you're looking for? I can do that. That's what we're really looking for. And the credentials proxy, I don't buy it.
Well, I agree. No employer is going to hire you because you said I did this and this and this. That's a problem. They're scanning resumes for a degree. I totally agree with you, but it's not working that way.
Well, that's a great thing to discuss and to work on, because say you run a small business, right? That's the only way you would hire. You would find out what they did. You would interview the person. You would find out what they did. You'd get references if you didn't believe them, if you wanted corroboration, and then you'd hire them, and you wouldn't give a shit about what their credentials were. As the companies get bigger, this thing becomes HR, and it becomes all this. HR is the worst thing in the world. And so they have to do it systematically. And they say, oh, no, we can't figure this stuff out. We don't even know, because we're not the people who do the work. We don't even know what's needed. They make it up. They put down competencies. competencies is the stupidest thing in the world. And because that doesn't guarantee anything in terms of the work. The work is, you've got to be passionate about it. You've got to know something. You've got to be able to do something and to learn fast how to do something. There's so many criteria that credentials don't measure at all, even the best ones, that I think that we're barking down the wrong tree here.
I see your point, Mark. I think I would agree. I think one of the challenges you have that you talk about accomplishments, and that's great. But I think when we talk about credentials and being able to demonstrate accomplishments, finished projects, capabilities, skills that contribute, it sounds to me like you could be describing the life of a musician, of a session. It's like I'm auditioning 3 times a week, right? Whereas if I can capture accomplishments that are portable and transferable, does that not help the situation, right? Or otherwise, I feel like I'm going to feel like I'm constantly in an audition.
It's like
of my skills.
It's like musicians recording, putting a recording down, sending a demo tape. It's the same kind of thing. You want to say, look at this for each accomplishment, and say, you see that before my team worked on it, it wasn't very good, or it didn't exist. Now you can see it's better. Now, we don't have a way of recording those on a disc like music, but that's what we want. Exactly.
Actually, I think there is a way to record that, but I wanted. Good.
Like what Ben said, who's a authority on accomplishment?
Right.
Who is? Wait, is that the question? What is your question?
Ben's statement is, I need authority on the record of accomplishment.
Okay, that's right. You need the authority. I don't know that you need God to tell you that it was or equivalent to tell you it was an accomplishment. You have to see it. So if you tell me you accomplished something, if you tell me you passed a law like you're George Santos, okay, I passed this law on that law, then we can look that up. If you tell me, if you tell me I went to Harvard, we don't know, but then we can write to Harvard and ask them if you went there. We have it all wrong. This whole idea of we need to have a central repository of accomplishments of credentials, and not have a central repository of a way to validate accomplishments. And there is a way to validate accomplishments. Which
I
is
would say
the
I agree, and I think, but I want to get one thing, because Doug's been patient here.
Yeah.
And we want to
let's
let's get Doug.
Point
you're
made,
up.
Mark. Thank you.
Okay, I'll tell. You've heard my.
We're gonna come.
My
You can
spiel.
come back.
It's the same
No,
spiel.
you can come back.
Good job, good job.
Doug.
Yeah, Doug, then Audrey.
Yeah, so Jamie, I really appreciate what you have to share. I was with Motorola and Nokia for 33 years. Now I'm doing work in education and healthcare with the KU School of Nursing. Passionate about education. The one thing I would say is, find a mentor. When I talk to the students, your grandchild, having you as a mentor to guide her is going to be, I think, tremendous. But I think having someone in young people's lives to give direction, I think, is so important. Intelligence is achieving complex goals. And, when I, got my engineering degree at Purdue, I was great in calculus. I lived in Spain for a couple of years, so I was fluent in Spanish. I could do programming. I was a pretty good programmer. All of that is gone, right? And, but I can achieve a lot of complex goals, right? And the good news is AI can do all those good things, right? I can, I don't need programming. I can do translation. So, I was mentioning, working with Gary Bowles on the next rules of work and about artificial intelligence. That's something I'm passionate about, is how do we use AI to amplify human ability, especially those who are the most vulnerable, the students that struggle. I have a niece who can't do math, but she's a great artist. I'm a horrible artist, but I can do math. And, so how can I help her, use technology to say, hey, these are how you get over your negatives, because I'm doing now amazing artwork because I'm using Midjourney and so forth. So, how can we use AI to help us do the things that are difficult, dull, dangerous, or dirty, so that humans can do the stuff that we are most passionate about?
What do
So
you think,
that's my
Jermaine?
comments.
You're on mute, Jermaine.
No, I mean, I really like what Doug posted. I just made a copy of what he posted in the chat about what AI can do versus, this need for creativity and critical thinking. Mark, I want to mention to you that Dr. John Boudreau wrote one of the chapters in my book, and he just published a book that pretty much cuts down everything into projects. It's work without jobs, and how to take these jobs and create projects based on the skills necessary. So I think smart companies are heading that way. I think the hard thing is, how do you create a new talent structure that allows for projects over jobs? And that's not that easy for a company like Motorola, who's had the same job descriptions for 35 years.
Mark,
Yeah,
I can
no,
make an
my-
introduction to,
Put that book
John.
in, put that book in the chat, please. I'd love to see it.
and I can introduce you to John.
Perfect.
Okay, I can make that happen.
Yeah,
Audrey,
Yeah, one comment is Esther Wojcicki. Wojcicki, thank you. I cannot pronounce anything. I'm like President Biden. But I got some of that thinking from her book, Esther's book, fantastic book on this is how to, how can we help people succeed? And especially the younger generation. So anyway, I'm looking forward to reading your book too. Thank you.
and now we go to Audrey Arbini. Audrey, glad to have you with us.
Thank you. I really was scrambling to rearrange my schedule to be on this because this is like a very big topic for me because I am on both sides of the fence. I have a company that I need certain, not just skill set, but very specific personality, very specific.
Like a sensibility too,
attitude,
isn't it? Isn't it like a sensibility, Audrey?
Exactly. It needs to fit with our culture because it's pretty intense environment. On the flip side of that, I've taught at Pratt Institute I taught there for 9 years. I taught at School of Visual Arts, and I have a new course coming out at a SUNY university that'll start, in a few weeks. So I've been on kind of both sides of this equation. What my feeling is that what's happening right now is that so many of these jobs, you can't find a school to get trained in them. You know what I mean? They're so advanced or industry specific, like what I do, which is sonic branding.
Right.
Very hard for you to find a sonic branding course, I bring them in and they have paid, I don't know how much money to go to some of these schools. And they'll come in as an intern and I give them a certain window, 1 semester, and they can't continue after that. I either hire them or they need to move on because that's not really a fair situation. And a lot of them I do hire, but it's only when I get them hands-on can I see how they respond to the culture. And many of them have said to me, I learned more in this semester. They're going for their master's, let's say, in technology, music technology. I've learned more in this semester than I've learned in 4 years at my school. And that's my feeling because the whole educational model, I taught a summer program. I'll make it very brief, let other people talk. I did, beyond my own course, I did something that was like a certificate program. And I had this one girl and each one was explaining why they were taking it was a multitude of people. I taught 2 classes, somebody else taught 2 classes, somebody else taught 2 classes. So it was consolidated. And she said, I'm taking this because I cannot afford to go to college. There's no way I can go to college. So this seemed like it was hitting on all the topics that I'm interested in. So I agree, like there's gonna be a big shift. There has to be a big shift in the model, because I look at resumes and I'm like, oh my God, this person is perfect. Till I get them in the door and I get them hands-on. And they may be book smart, but they're not relevant to what we're doing in our businesses right now. So I wanted to just kind of feel you out on that. And I get the sense that you would agree with that, but I'm not positive.
I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think who we're missing on this call, I was just thinking, is the HR community, because all of this, we all know this to be true. Curiosity, creativity, they aren't hiring on that, right? And you're saying your own hiring is looking for that, but you really don't know how to identify it, right? You see their resume and it looks like they're creative, and then you put them on the job and they aren't. So, I mean, I think this is a problem, is this measurement or some way to identify it. That's the problem. And I agree, Mark, that, well, I don't know if they should be disbanded, but they sure should be revolutionized.
Well, they're not being disbanded. I don't think they're in their own department. They're essentially, I think more and more, they're coming under legal, right? They're increasingly going to be controlled and are controlled by legal as much as they are. Their legal obligations as opposed to the lawyers actually, but they're much more concerned about letter of the law, not the spirit. Letter, just, okay, we got X percentage of this kind of group looking, applying for the job, we're done. And, then making sure and one of the other thing I find particularly weird with a lot of big corporations is they invest in their internal training programs and they give you some bullshit little digital certificate that gets back to Mark, to one of the points I was making. It's not portable, right? If I could have learned and had been trained by Gartner, and I was on a number of things, just software products that I see written up, right, in job postings. There's no way my little bullshit digital certificate from Gartner is transferable over there. They'd actually want me to sit down at the term of the software and actually show that I could use it. And that's where when I was saying earlier, it's this portability. But sorry, Jimmy, but HR does need to be, let's just call it what it is. It's authentication.
Yeah.
Hey, you did this. Yes, we now prove that you exist and that you don't have a federal criminal record. Okay, you can have an interview.
Yeah. Jermaine, we've talked about this before, is the waste where we have people who are coming out of military careers who have perfectly good medical skills, right? But they don't have equivalency into the civilian medical corps. It is absolutely ridiculous, right? And the fact is that the place where that should be openly embraced is the Veterans Administration, and they don't know how to do it, right? Even though they are part of the military funded system, right? So that frustrates me a great deal, right? That we don't know how to take a medic and apply the skills of a medic to being a paramedic or being a, something, all right, that's, physician's assistant in, actual application of civilian medicine. That, and there are just all kinds of other, Mike, all the credentialing in, by marketing, trade associations, a lot of that stuff isn't even accepted by the corporations where they're supposed to be working.
Correct.
Sorry.
I knew a Marine medic, corpsman, and he had, was excellent at, as he had many medals for his service. And he could get a job back in the medical community in that transition you were saying, right? It's like, well, I don't have to say sir a lot. But what they did is they wanted to throw him right into the middle of the graveyard shift in the ER, right? Without any kind of transitioning and he's like, and he said, well, that wasn't particularly appealing, you know, when I came back from what I did to having to go into the most intense situation, because not all, you know, corpsmen or medics want to come back and do emergency room. They might want to just be registered nurses, and with all their training, they're like this close to being a registered nurse. So anyhow, I that you know my background, Kevin, and my family, so that's particularly acute with me as well.
Jermaine, we see Andrea Goldberg's hand up, so we're going to see Andrea join us.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I remember now in the book, I talk about ACT's assessment. There's an example of someone that was a janitor that scored higher than the CEO of the company.
Wow. So the
Yeah.
other comment I was going to make, so I started out my career in HR. I'm an organizational psychologist by training, and I'm involved in a professional organization of HR people. Although I spent my career in marketing, I had shifted. But there is a lot of innovation going on in HR. So I hear HR bashing, but and one of the things that they're looking at is to do simulations and assessments and not just rely on the, you know, what's on the paper. So I do think that there is some shift where, you know, people are looking at, to Audrey's point, how do you operate in that environment, which you could do in more of a simulation or assessment versus what a piece of paper says. One of the things that I see that's challenging is with LinkedIn kind of controlling the universe of people's resumes, is the downside of the automation. And I think it was mentioned where, you know, people are getting weeded out and not even making it to the simulations because of what the standards are being set by organizations such as LinkedIn. So I think there needs to be some work done. And I don't know exactly how to do it, but I think we have ways of improving it. As I said, there's this testing, the simulations, but if people are being weeded out before they get to that point, then you don't even are even allowed to do that. So, and the other comment I wanted to make is the compensation systems in organizations, because I did a lot of hiring in my last job was in Pitney Bowes, and I created a market intelligence function. And some of the people I hired didn't have advanced degrees, but they had great skill sets working at research companies. And the HR people didn't want to pay them what they were worth because they didn't have, you know, the degree. Oh, she doesn't have a master's.
It would actually save companies. It would save companies a lot of money because they could pay less at the beginning, you know, for those without a degree. At least I think they can. I feel like I've addressed all these issues in the book. I mean, HR and some of the good things HR is doing, and AI and how AI filters. New York has a whole legislation up right now that AI can't even be used. But SHRM's fighting that. So, I mean, it's all in the book. Or SHRM has a comment on that, let's say. So they held the legislation. So, I mean, it's a changing world. I will say this was my war cry and my synopsis with great data, that this is not a fair system. My grandiose vision is that I will be able to get the EEOC to look at it, because it's going to take federal regulation to make these changes. I don't think companies will do it on their own. And it's kind of like when President Obama said, if you include Common Core in your race top application, you'll have a better chance. You'll get more points scoring. Well, that created Common Core in our country because everybody included it. And then they had to implement it. So, I mean, I think it's going to take something from the feds.
Yeah, probably will. Jermaine, that was a really good summary of your manifesto. All right. Thank you for unpacking it today.
I love this conversation with all of you. It was great. And thank you for your
You sold some books today too. Right?
I'm going to order
right in chat. Good for you.
Yay.
So
Thanks.
we're looking forward to getting the playbacks to you. Sell a lot of books. And when you're ready to,
and if anybody has connections with national media, CNBC, Fox News, I don't care about the politics, any side, let me know. I'm trying to get on some national venues.
Well, we're, after we do that,
Oh,
then I'm
we
gonna
have
start
to-
talking to you about the legislative relations agenda. Okay?
Yes, yes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Have a great one.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.